Sir, Captain Wigley, 25th ID. Probably the most promising thing I've seen you bring attention to recently was relooking the way we evaluate and promote our leaders. I've also seen that you've said that maybe the Army's greatest challenge. What obstacles do we face, and when can we start seeing change affected there?
Well, I think that what you're referring to is I gave a speech at West Point, and I talked about both this war and the war in Afghanistan essentially being the captain's wars, that these are fundamentally small unit wars. We're not dealing with corps in the field or divisions in the field, but at the largest, a brigade, and a lot of things at the battalion, the company, and the platoon level. And so a lot of younger officers, company-grade officers, and NCOs for that matter, have been given a lot of responsibility, a lot of independence, a lot of freedom to innovate, to do new things, to do things differently, to deal with a whole range. Everything from shooting the enemy to holding village shures or building roads or 100 other things like that. And what I talked about at West Point was my worry about what happens when guys who have been, men and women who've been given that kind of freedom and that kind of opportunity come back and end up in a closet in the Pentagon preparing PowerPoint slides. And how's the Army going to challenge people who've had that kind of experience to stay in the Army? And some of the things that I've talked about is increased opportunities to go back to school, to get a degree or a graduate degree, maybe to teach at one of the service schools, but give you a variety of experiences so that you're just not plucked back down into a cubbyhole somewhere in the Pentagon where you don't know whether it's night or day. And so that's my concern, and frankly, I said in that speech that prospect terrified me, because we have now the most battle-hardened, and the senior military guys would tell you, the best military we have ever had, and I'd hate to see us squander it after we're out of active combat by not having innovative, open-minded personnel policies that take advantage of the experiences that you all have had in places like Iraq. Yes, sir.
Hello, sir. First off, thanks for coming. I'm Special Lieutenant Bravo Troop, 2nd 116th. With the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, when will that take effect, and what role do you see that playing in the United States military?
Well, first of all, we're in the process of training. All of the services, we're basically doing it in 3 phases. The first is getting the regulations right and the policies written right. Second, preparing the training materials. And then third, carrying out the training itself. The training itself is divided into 3 parts. First, training the experts, the personnel people, the human resources people, the chaplains and folks like that, counselors. Second is training the commanders, and then third, training the force. Virtually everybody has completed the first 2 of these phases, so we are now in the process of beginning to train the force. Guess is you won't see much change at all, because the whole thrust of the training is you're supposed to go on treating everybody like you're supposed to be treating everybody now, with dignity, respect, and discipline. And the same kind of military discipline that applies and regulations that apply to heterosexual relationships will apply in terms of homosexual relationships. Same thing in terms of uniforms. In terms of benefits, there are no special benefits. There won't be a protected class, if you will. So the responsibility is basically going to be to treat each other the way you ought to be treating each other right now. I mean, the truth is we've made a lot of change in the military over the years. And we admitted women into the military a long time ago, and we still have a big problem in the military with sexual assault. So as I say, the same rules you're supposed to be living by now will be the same rules you'll be living by in the future. And that's the way it ought to be.
Probably have time for one more, two more.
Okay? Yeah.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Secretary. Staff Sergeant Monroe, Bravo Troop 2016. My question is kind of a follow-on to that. As women have been filling a more active role in combat situations in both Iraq and Afghanistan, do we see a likelihood in the next possibly 5, 10, 15 years of women actually serving combat MOSs?
Well, I think you've put your finger on something that's key, and that's combat MOSs, because the truth is women have been serving in combat already. And I had some women complain to me in Afghanistan that because of the rules in terms of searching Afghan women and so on, a lot of combat patrols would take women soldiers along with them. And their complaint was because they're not in a combat MOS, they haven't had combat training, but they're on a combat patrol. So, you know, there's a certain contradiction there. And frankly, the policy hadn't caught up with the reality in some respects. I'm confident that this is an area that is going to change. The time scale of the change, I have no idea. We're just starting out with putting women on submarines. That'll be a learning process. I think they're doing it smart and cleverly and carefully. And my guess is they'll do the same thing with respect to women in combat. But I think the first place it has to start is with the reality that in a lot of places we're already there. One more? Yes.
How's it going, sir? Specialist Van Buren 299. You mentioned earlier the situation in Libya. Do you see any repercussions coming here from the situation in Libya, or just the unrest that's been in the Middle East with the protests in these other countries?
Well, I think that I don't see any repercussions from Libya coming here, partly because there's such broad Arab support for what's being done in Libya. I do think that the situation in Bahrain has created some stress here in Iraq because of sympathy for their fellow Shia, and we'll be talking about that with the Prime Minister and President, I'm sure, in meetings later today. But I think in terms of the broader disputes going and turmoil going on around the region, in a way, it's a measure of what you and the Iraqis have achieved, that Iraq is already where a lot of these other countries want to be, and that is having elections, having fair elections where anybody can run, having people from multiple sectarian groups running, and then having a pretty good democratic government with political and human rights. So Iraq, in many respects, thanks to the efforts of a lot of people and a lot of blood and treasure, in some respects is a model in terms of where the rest of these guys want to go. And Iraq can be a help to them, I think, in that respect. But in terms of blowback from Libya and so on, I don't see much. So let's get some pictures and hand out some coins.
On your feet. Oh, catch. The command to fall out. Form a line over here to my left, to your right. Fall out.